there is a change at the top of the NFL draft, and the Rams now own the first pick, 97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles insider, national football reporter for today's Picks.com, John McMullen. He joins us as we take a look at this big-time trade, John, and the Rams come out of right field. They're getting a lot of criticism, should they?
Yes and no. I mean, clearly it's a combination of need and sort of sizzle because they want to make a big splash with the move from St. Louis back to Los Angeles, and they certainly didn't want to start this season with the knowledge that Case Keenum and Nick Foles were battling for the starting quarterback job. And as I said, that's not to say one of those guys might still be under center week one, but at least you're going to have the hope of a big-time potential prospect that is looming in the future and very quickly in the future. And most people think that's going to be Carson Wentz, but some believe it could be Jared Goff, and we'll see how that shakes out. So the people criticizing the Rams saying they made this trade without knowing who they wanted at number one overall, I don't believe that for a second. It's just a matter of what their decision is going to be.
John, to piggyback on that, we'll dive into that trade a little bit more. There were some reports that the Eagles had conversations about trading up to number one, and now Ann Rappaport is reporting not to rule the Eagles out to move up to number two. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's Marcus Mariota all over again.
Yeah, it really is. And the Cleveland Browns, a lot of it has to do with what the Cleveland Browns feel. A lot of people speculate that their favorite is Goff. And, for instance, if the Rams all of a sudden decide we want the more pro-ready guy and take Jared Goff, well, why do the Cleveland Browns want to sit there at number two and take a quarterback they don't want? So there's the potential of moving down, and that opens up the slot for the Eagles to move up and get the guy that they want. But I think that's still a very unlikely scenario, even though in theory it's a possibility because it all hinges on the Rams' decision. And as I pointed out today on my piece at 973ESPN.com, it's sort of like the final blow from Chip Kelly, getting punch in the gut, because it's that extra second-round pick that really gave the Rams the advantage over the Eagles in trying to move up.
So do you believe the Eagles were making an offer to Tennessee?
Oh, no question. In fact, they offered Tennessee, and they withdrew the offer earlier this week. However, that withdrawal, to the people I was talking to, is sort of like a nod to they knew they weren't going to win. So they kind of withdrew with the intent of knowing Tennessee wasn't going to accept the proposal anyway. And it comes down to the fact that the Titans are a team that wanted to add numbers more than anything else. And because that's a pretty precipitous drop, Mike, if you think about it, from 1 to 15, it would have been a much better scenario for the Titans to move from 1 to 8, but the Eagles didn't have the extra assets, and the Titans, having a talent-deficient roster, they want numbers, and that's what the Rams were able to offer.
What'd you think of the amount of picks St. Louis gave up? Now, I've kind of, in the past, people talk about it's a haul. They gave up so many picks. I like it back to the trade that the Rams were involved with. They got all those picks from the Redskins. They haven't made the playoffs once since that deal.
Was 2012.
And the Redskins have made the playoffs twice.
Yeah,
so
twice.
For all the criticism they get, they made it with RG3. They made it with Kirk Cousins last year.
So they got two quarterbacks
They
got two quarterbacks in that 12 draft and have made the playoffs twice because of two different quarterbacks that they got in that draft, in which they traded away all those picks. So if you're getting the quarterback in return, you're winning this deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that long term is Carson Wentz, and I think that's the guy the Rams are going to pick. If he turns out to be a franchise quarterback, this is going to be a footnote for the Rams in the future. It's going to be a winning trade for them. There's no question about it. In the short term, though, they're going to get criticized, especially next year, because as I often point out, if you're going to play a rookie quarterback, you're not going to be very good next year. So that 2017 first-round pick is the issue in the short term, because that's going to be a top 10 pick and maybe a top 5 pick going to the Tennessee Titans. And next year at this time, it's going to make the Rams look awful bad. But if 2 or 3 years down the line, Carson Wentz really starts taking off and becomes an all-pro level quarterback, it's not going to matter in the big picture.
Speaking big picture, John, so 9 draft selections exchanged in this trade. When you look back on the history of big deals and big moves that were made, then where do you put this one? Because you see things like when the Saints traded their entire draft to the Redskins, or you mentioned the one about where the Redskins dealt with the Rams, but then you still have the Herschel Walker stuff, Cowboys and Vikings. Where do you put a move like this? Giants and Chargers in 2004. Where do you put a move like this, if you were going to rank it as monster moves?
Well, it is a monster move. There's no question about that. And to move from 15 to 1 isn't easy. It's pretty difficult. We talked about it a lot last year with the Eagles trying to move from 20 up to 1 or even 2. And it's really, really difficult to do, and you have to give basically the kitchen sink. If you look at it from a perspective of what the Rams got, as Mike mentioned before, for RG3, or the opportunity to draft him, they got more than they gave up. So for what, if you look at previous history and moves of this type, the Rams actually gave up less this time than normal. It's still a haul, and it's still a lot. The Tennessee Titans, as their GM, John Robinson, pointed out today, they now have 6 picks in the first 76 players of this draft. So that's an organization that can add a lot of talent to their team very, very quickly. And that's the nature of this business. And now it really comes down to what kind of prospects are Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, and are they worthy of this kind of haul? And that's really the question at the end of the day that needs to be answered.
John, so now that the Rams are at the top, and there's, you're going to hear reports back and forth. You got Adam Schefter reporting that they're leaning towards Goff. I'm sure other people will say, well, we're hearing they're going towards Wentz. We're not going to know until either A, one of them signed a deal before, or the night that their name gets called. But it's most likely you don't trade that kind of haul to draft a left tackle. What does this do?
No, absolutely not.
But what does this do now to the top of the draft? How does that affect a team like Philadelphia draft? Does this affect a team at drafting 8?
Oh, sure it does. It's got dominoes all over the place because, as you mentioned, you look at a guy like Laramie Tunsil, who's going to be the number 1 overall pick if the Tennessee Titans were forced to stay there. So he's going to drop down the board. You sit at San Diego at number 3, and they have so many needs. They could use a left tackle. He could possibly come off the board. He could possibly fall more. There's been speculation that the Ravens could use an offensive lineman, and certainly at number 6 overall, if he somehow falls to that. I've been talking for weeks about how much the Eagles like Miles Jack. If his sort of medicals go the way they should in Indianapolis, and there's no reason to think they shouldn't, he could possibly fall another pick or 2. And then if you're the Eagles, I don't think a player like that is going to last to 8, but you could start thinking about moving up a little bit, maybe to 5, maybe to 6 if somebody's trying to get out. So this has all kind of implications, and another being, hey, maybe Howie Roseman, and I thought it was a little bit of draft speak, but maybe Ezekiel Elliott is now in the conversation now for if the Eagles are forced to stay at number 8.
John McMullen with us. So, John, the Eagles did spend a lot of time looking at quarterbacks. That's been well documented. Should they have spent their time better looking deeper into a Miles Jack or DeForest Buckner or Joey Bosa?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're well aware of the top players in this draft, and there's not really a lot of due diligence you have to do in certain players. Jalen Ramsey would be a perfect example of that because he's a kid who's never going to fall to number 8, but you realize as the Philadelphia Eagles how good he is. So if lightning strikes and something weird happens on draft night, you already know what those kind of players have in their tank. I think the quarterback position is a little bit different because obviously it's the most important position in this game, and it involves so much more, as we see with the travails nearly every day with Johnny Manziel. It involves so much more with just physical skill set and your ability to throw the football. You need to be the leader of a team both on and off the field, and that requires more due diligence than certain other positions. That's just the reality of it.
John, I want to touch back to the Ian Rappaport report that he said it's not really a report, but he confirms that the Philadelphia Eagles were in discussions, as you confirmed as well, that he says do not rule out a trade to get up to number 2. To go from 8 to 2 after you saw what the Rams just did, do the Eagles have the ammunition?
That all depends on the Cleveland Browns. And when I say that, it still remains a very, very unlikely scenario because a lot of people assume that because Cleveland went out and signed RG3 and Hugh Jackson has been sort of a quarterback whisperer in his days in the NFL, that organization somehow feels that that's the answer and they can look away from the quarterback position. I don't believe that for a second. I believe Cleveland's going to stay at number 2 and take whoever the Rams don't, whether it's Jared Goff or Carson Wentz. I think the quarterbacks are going to be 1 and 2 off the board, and then all of a sudden it pushes Paxton Lynch up the board. But that's a different discussion. Now, all that said, the Cleveland Browns are going to listen to offers. And yeah, it's going to take a king's ransom, and I don't believe the Eagles are going to want to do it. They could certainly use picks moving forward from 2017 to get it done, but I don't think at the end of the day, unless it's Wentz sitting there, then they might revisit it because that's the player that Doug Peterson really, really wants.
You wonder if it's worth it, giving up a draft pick ransom for what the Eagles situation is. Different for the Rams. I don't have a problem with the Rams taking a risk, taking a shot. They have kind of been stuck in this 7-9 middle-of-the-road spot for a long, long time, and mainly because they don't have a quarterback. They've got a pretty decent defense. They've drafted a bunch of weapons, and you're playing with Case Keenum. You just can't win like that, right? I mean, it's ridiculous.
No, you can't. My biggest issue with this from the Eagles' standpoint is they're repeating sort of the mistakes Chip Kelly made last year. No matter what Chip said, we all knew he was trying to do everything possible to get Marcus Mariota. And you know who else knew that? Sam Bradford. And all of a sudden it doesn't get done, and you got to go back to OTAs and mini camps and training camp and try to explain to Sam Bradford, no, you were my guy the entire time. We believe in you. We have to move forward. You're the quarterback of this team. It's going to affect his psyche. Now, this is the second straight year this guy's going through it. No matter what the Eagles say, and they will say all the right things when we show up on Monday when Howie's scheduled to speak and Doug's scheduled to do their pre-draft press conference, they're going to say the right things, but Sam Bradford knows that the Eagles believe he is not the long-term answer at this position. It has to affect his confidence. And that is going to hurt his play on the field. It's part of the whole thing, and the Eagles are playing with fire.
Of course, the difference is, John, that Doug Peterson will probably actually speak to Sam Bradford, where we know Chip's interpersonal skills were not there, right?
Well, he's not going to say hi to him in the hallway. We know that.
So we come full circle. So Chip had a hand in this, if you will, or this news today. You talked about that. What do you expect Howie to talk about when you guys get to visit with him on Monday?
He's not going to talk about much. I mean, that's just the reality. You don't want to show your hand, but he'll just talk about his overlying philosophy and things that he feels. My guess is he'll talk about taking the best player available, not reaching for needs, sort of very basic stuff that isn't going to tip what the Eagles' plans are. And now that this is done, it opens a whole new set of possibilities. And the fact that we talked about moving up from number 13 to number 8 and how he's talked about the line of sort of demarcation in this draft from the top tier to the second tier is at number 10. But if the Eagles, for instance, are intent on getting an offensive lineman, well, maybe they consider moving back and trying to get that second-round pick back. If they think a kid like Conklin or Decker is not that much lower than, say, a Ronnie Stanley. So I think it opens up a number of options that weren't there before today. But at the end of the day, I think the Eagles are going to stay at number 8 and take the best player available.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. So Wentz and Goff, there's some reports out there that one of the reasons that they did the deal this early is because they wanted 2 weeks to kind of debate who's the better guy. If you trade up for number 1, don't you think you already have a guy in mind? Like, don't you already clear-cutly know who you want?
Yeah, I just tweeted. I'm not a big Jeff Fisher fan, and I think he should trademark 7 and 9 and at least make a little money off of it. But I don't believe for 1 second the Los Angeles Rams made this trade without knowing exactly who they're going up to get. That is just not done. You don't give up that kind of haul and then say, oh, who should we take? Should we take Goff? Should we take Wentz? Or even somebody else at a different position? The Los Angeles Rams know exactly who they want and who they're going to take, and that's the reason they made that deal. Anybody else speculating is really, really insulting the organization. And it doesn't matter who you're talking about. The Cleveland Browns, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Oakland Raiders, any bad organization in this league, if you make a move like this, you do it because you have a plan.
John, CBS, Jason La Canfora, continuing to hear that Chip Kelly is, quote, more enamored with trying to resurrect Blaine Gabbert's career than selecting a quarterback in the draft. I guess there's two things of thought there. One, is it a done deal that Kaepernick's going to be gone and that Kaepernick would beat out Gabbert? And two, is that an ultimate smokescreen for the Eagles there? Like, hey, we're going to try to resurrect Blaine Gabbert. You can feel safe that we're not going to take a quarterback.
I'll tell you, it's interesting because if there's one guy with the ego who thinks he could resurrect Blaine Gabbert, it's Chip Kelly. So I can't put it completely out of the possibility, but boy, that would be hubris beyond belief, and I just don't think Chip has gone to that level or that degree. But yeah, I don't think Colin Kaepernick's going to be there. I think he's going to be in Denver, and that more has to do with his disdain for the 49ers organization, which doesn't have much to do with Chip, because I think that would be a good fit for both sides. And if they do keep him, he's going to beat out Blaine Gabbert. There's no question about that. As far as the smoke screen aspect, it's a concern because if Wentz and Goff go 1-2 and you're sitting there at number 7 and you're the San Francisco 49ers and you need a quarterback, do you feel comfortable with Paxton Lynch and reaching for him at that particular position? It's going to be an interesting night, and actually in my last mock draft, and obviously I'm going to have to do a new one, I had the 49ers reaching for Paxton Lynch. So I think that remains a possibility.
Well, John, you'll be at the NovaCare Complex on Monday when Howie talks. I expect you to get the full scouting report on what the new media room looks like. That was all over Twitter yesterday, that they've taken one of those buildings and created a new media room with comfy couches and big screen TVs.
Yeah, exactly. They kicked us out of the main building now. Get us away.
That's the story, isn't it? Right? That you're on site, but not really?
Well, I'll tell you, Doug is smarter than people are realizing. I think the fact that you create an environment that's nicer than the one before, but you also get us away from the main building. It's a very deft move by the Philadelphia Eagles, and it's little things like that make you think that this organization is finally heading in the right direction and making prudent decisions. As goofy as that sounds, I think it makes a lot of sense.
John McMullen's with us. I was reading Mike Sando's piece the other night about trades that should happen. One of them was Fletcher Cox flip-flopping picks and next year's one to get up to number one. That's obviously out now. But another one was a third-round pick for Jamal Charles. Is that something that would perk your interest?
Yeah, it would. I would much rather send a third-round pick to Kansas City for Jamal Charles. The medicals obviously have to check out, but that is a proven player. That's one of the 2 or 3 best backs in football. And that's what you're hoping Ezekiel Elliott could become if you take him at number 8. So I would much rather give up a third-round pick for the sure thing than sort of reach for a running back in the top 10, simply because I don't think the position itself is of enough value to waste a top 10 pick. The Cox thing, we kind of talked about it last week, and I like Mike a lot, but I don't think people understand it. Veteran players, even good ones like Fletcher Cox, are not as valuable as people think they are, especially ones who are going to get paid. And as we discussed, Fletcher Cox just turned down significant money. So remember, if you're flipping him to another organization like Tennessee, that's what the Titans know. They're going to have to give him a check for $50 or $60 million. So that doesn't make him as valuable as you would think for the level of player he is.
All right, John has more on that trade over at 97.3 ESPN.com and how the Eagles played a role in the Rams moving up to number 1. Check it out on our website. Thanks, John.
Hey, thank you, guys.